All right, welcome once again to Route 67. That's for our grade 6 and 7 students or youth at Grace Point. And so if you're not one of those, you're welcome to join us as well. We're going to start off by playing a little game. It's kind of like a word pairing game. I'll give you an example, and then we're going to go through 10 different ones. So if you know the answer, just kind of yell it out or speak it out. I know you're too cool to yell, right? Okay, here we go. So I'll give you the first example. So if I go ham and cheese. No! Ham and cheese? No, ham and eggs. Ham and eggs. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Gayleen. Here we go. Number 1. If I said sooner or, what's the answer? Later. Sooner or later. Here's one for our friends down south. Stars and stripes. You got it. How about fun and games? Yeah, fun and games. Oh, here's one. Peanut butter and what? Is it ham or is it jam or is it jelly? I don't know if you got either one of those. We'll take it. This is a simple one here. Salt and pepper. Yes, salt and pepper. Oh, here's one from the Bible. Adam and Eve. You got it. Okay, pork and beans. Okay, 3 more. Cream and sugar. Awesome. Good job. 2 more. This one is for all those that like Western movies. Dead or alive. And our last one, which ties in a little bit to what we're going to talk about today. Lost and found. Yeah. Now, if you remember last week, I told you a story about me being lost, and I did get found. That was good, and we looked a little bit at the story of Zacchaeus, the little guy who ran ahead up into a tree and looked out, met Jesus, spent a day with Jesus, no doubt had some very interesting conversations with Jesus, and at the end of that day, his life was transformed. Well, today we want to look at 3 little stories of that talk about being found. So they're found in Luke chapter 15. There's 3 of them there. And the first one starts out with a shepherd who is out there. These are parables of Jesus. So a shepherd is out there and he's looking after his sheep. Now, back in New Testament times, that was a pretty regular job for a lot of people. They were shepherds, and shepherds show up a lot in the New Testament. Well, they didn't have fenced pastures like we do now. But at nighttime, the sheep would be kept in an enclosure. But during the day, they would go out and they would kind of graze up and down the hills eating. And the shepherd was there to kind of watch over and make sure everything was okay. At the end of the day, when it started to get dark, he would bring his sheep back to the enclosure. And as they were going through the little gate there, he would count them. 1, 2, 3, until he had the number. In this parable that Jesus talks about, there were 100 sheep. And he gets up to 97, 98, 99. Oh my goodness, there is 1 missing. So 99 are safe, but the shepherd realizes that one of his little lamb or one of his sheep is missing. And so he goes out and he searches for this little lamb. Little lamb was totally helpless, or the sheep was totally helpless to help himself. And the shepherd comes looking for him, seeking after him. And no doubt he could hear him bleeding somewhere. And probably the wolves and stuff were listening for that too. But the shepherd finds him first and picks him up because he's too weak to walk home. And he puts him on his shoulders and he carries him back to the enclosure. And he is safe. The second story of something being lost, it follows that one right after, and it's about a lady, a woman who has got 10 coins. Now, these were very valuable coins to her. Each one represented probably about a day's wage. So she's sitting down one day playing with her money, and she counts 1, 2, 3. She's supposed to have 10, and she gets to 9, and the 10th one is missing. So she recounts quickly probably. Nope, she only has 9. Now what do? She's kind of like, she's searching. She begins searching for her coin. Turns up the lamp, gets her broom out. She goes through her house, and she finds it. And when she finds it, she rejoices over finding it, just as the shepherd rejoiced over finding his lost little lamb. The third story is about the prodigal son, found at the end of chapter 15 of Luke. This one's a little more well known, and it's a picture of two brothers. One of them, his dad's quite wealthy, and he wants his dad to give him his share of the inheritance. So maybe he was going to get half, we'll say. And so this was actually a very rude thing to do and very disrespectful to his dad, because basically when he goes and he asks his dad to give him all the stuff that's going to come to him once his dad is dead. Basically, he's saying, Dad, I wish you were dead so that I could have all my stuff. But since you're still alive, can I now have it so that I can go and do what I want to do? And the father graciously gives him his inheritance. Away he goes, he takes off, and he has the party time of his life. He's got lots of friends, he's having a great time, and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, his money runs out. And just as his money runs out, so do all his friends. And at the end of the day, he finds himself eating pig slop, which was incredibly not a great thing for a Jewish boy or man to be doing, eating from the pig trough. And then he thinks, you know what? My dad has a whole bunch of servants, and he's got lots of land, he's got lots of food still. Why don't I just go back home and I'll tell Dad that I'm sorry, I totally messed up, and I'll just be one of your servants, because even that would be way better than what I've got now. So he goes back to his father's place. And it says when he was a long way off, his dad, who was standing in the doorway looking for his son who was lost, sees him. And he runs. Another thing that was very undignified for an older man to do, was to run. And he runs towards his son. And his son sees his dad, and he gets down on his knees, and he has his script all prepared to tell his dad how sorry he was and how he had totally messed up. And his dad doesn't hardly let him get the words out of his mouth, where he grabs him and he hugs him and he says, "Welcome home." And he ends up throwing a big welcome home party for him. Now, the neat thing is that all of these three parables, they're not true stories. They're making an example. The example is that all of us are lost without Christ. And each one of us that finds our way, or Christ finds us, there's kind of little different pictures there. Something really cool happens in heaven, it says. It says that angels in heaven rejoices over one person that God finds and rescues, or is searching for God and he reveals himself to them, or has walked away from God and comes back. He welcomes them with open arms, and he rejoices over them. So what a fantastic picture of what God is like. Often we think God is this mean, judgmental guy who just wants to whack me with a stick if I step out of line, but that's not the God that we find in the story here, because that's not the God in the Bible. So we're going to put a little worksheet in here that you can go and grab, and you can do a little more digging on these incredible stories of people or things that were lost and then were found, and then were greatly celebrated, just as we are. So thanks for joining us. You can grab those worksheets, and we look forward to meeting with you again next time on Route 67.